Welcome to the Squatchers Lounge podcast with your hosts, the two biggest nobodies in Bigfooting, Mr. Jeffrey Kelly and Kipp Morrill. Give it up.
Alrighty, thank you once again for the good introduction there, Ro. We appreciate you getting us set up tonight. Tonight, our second episode is The Circus Has Come to Town. That's right, we're going to talk about Tammy Murray and her outing of David Pilates at a local lecture in Oklahoma. And right here always with me is my co-host, Kipp Morrill. How are you doing this afternoon, Kipp?
I'm doing great, Jeff. How's it back there in Tennessee?
It's cold and miserable and no snow, so it's kind of depressing. But thanks for asking, Mr. California Man.
Well, things are good here. We've actually got sun out, probably low 60s, so I can't complain. And I'm sitting inside on a podcast.
Yeah,
that's okay. Glad to be here and excited to talk to our guests today. That's going to be a great show.
Absolutely it is. Now, if for those that don't know what's actually going on here, we're going to talk with Tammy about her post blog with Sean Evidence on the Bigfoot Evidence blog about attending a local lecture at a local museum to her, where they discuss some of the rather objective side of Bigfooting rather than the science-based Bigfooting that we're all kind of used to. So, Kipp, what were your thoughts on those postings? I mean, what were your thoughts on what David had said during his lecture?
I think the most interesting part of that whole interaction was that there seems to be a certain amount of people within the Bigfoot community who have an arrogance and maybe a disrespect for other viewpoints. And it seems that people get offended when people ask questions. And so I thought it was interesting that Tammy kind of brought that out a little bit. I thought that her way of explaining how the story went sounded as though she was quite respectful with the questions that she had, and it did sound as though Mr. Pilates maybe didn't have all his facts straight when it came to some of the information that he was giving and talking about. So you know, it's a good thing to have people within the Bigfooting community who are open and honest and willing to discuss things. And so Tammy brought that out, that some folks aren't really open to doing that. And when that doesn't occur, it's up to the rest of the community to try and figure out what the truth is and what the truth is. So that's kind of what I thouut, Jeff.
Absolutely. And also what we've got with us this afternoon, we've got Justin Smeja, who was also part of the little scandal, if you'd like to call it, who was outright called a liar in the face of the public when Tammy had questioned David a little further after the lecture during a book signing process that was going on. And we're going to get his thoughts on what happened with that and, you know, get to talk to Justin a little bit about some other things as well. Why don't you go ahead and introduce our first guest as Tammy, give us her bio and tell us all about her.
All right, well, Tammy Murray is an Oklahoma Bigfoot enthusiast. She's an outdoors woman, and everybody knows she's the glass artist. And, Jeff, you could show off that wonderful piece of glass art that she has.
Absolutely. I've actually got two of them on, to be honest.
Nice. Very nice. She's a co-host of After Hours with Team Taser with Rictor Riolo and Nadia Moore. She lived in Colorado for 12 years, spending weekends in the Rocky Mountains camping, hiking, shooting, and horseback riding. She now resides in central Oklahoma, where she currently searches for proof of Bigfoot. Welcome, Tammy Murray.
Welcome, Tammy. Very glad to have you aboard with us. So it seems that the circus has come to town, as you put it, when I asked for a quote about your blog posting when I went to bring out my new edition of As the Squatch Turns. So tell us how you got invited to go out to the lecture, Tammy. Tell us from the beginning.
Well, I found out about it a week before it was scheduled at the Science Museum of Oklahoma from a friend of mine who posted on my Facebook timeline. And I didn't plan on going because I wasn't really interested in, listening to the lecture. But my friend talked me into it, and she paid my way, and she's my bestie, so we went to the lecture. And, overall, it was very fun and entertaining.
Okay. Now, did you have preconceived notions upon the thoughts of what evidence might be brought forward to you during the lecture. That's why you weren't interested in going in the first place, because of who the guest speaker actually were.
No, not because of who necessarily, but because, as an American citizen, I have the right to speculate and, come up with my own opinions. So, my opinion was that I was just going to bypass that lecture and, wait for things to develop that are supposed to develop in this whole DNA study. But looking back, I'm glad I went.
Absolutely. I'm glad you went as well, because, it gives the community a voice when somebody's willing to stand up and just, ask the questions, especially when they know the background of the questions that they're asking to begin with. A general question such as, what does Sasquatch eat? That's a great question. Nobody can really give you the answer. But when you ask about DNA results that have been, rectified in 2 different labs, supposedly the same sample, that are now saying that they have completely different results, and that the submitter actually lied and submitted 2 separate results in public view, to me, is outrageous. It's something that just, it can't be stood for. So at that point, when you had the discretion that, this had happened, did you immediately feel you had to put a stop to it?
Well, my question was very simple. In the lecture, David, specified that they had around 110 samples, and that the results were, that they were, basically human with a difference. And I'm not quoting him exactly on that, just to clarify. But my question was, of the 110 samples, were any of those samples from the Sierra kills? And his answer was yes. And I said the same samples that were sent to independent labs and came back as bear with human contamination. And he said no. And then he went on to call Justin Smeja a liar.
Okay, now that's a good point for us to go ahead and stop. Kipp, why don't you go ahead and introduce our second guest? That would be Justin Smeja. Why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit of bio on him, and we'll get Justin's take on it.
Hey, so we have Justin Smeja is an avid hunter and licensed guide, now known as the infamous shooter in the Sierra Kills event. Justin's become an active member of the Bigfooting community. Originally from Texas and now residing in Northern California, he is the co-founder of the Sierra's Evidence Initiative. Please welcome Justin Smeja.
Justin Smeja, thank you very much this afternoon for joining us. I very much appreciate it. This is the first time you and I have ever met or talked. Is that correct?
Correct.
It's very good to meet you, and I appreciate you taking your time out of your day. Now, when you heard what David Pilates had actually said about you at that point, as quoting you as being a liar, and the fact that you had sent 2 separate samples to different tests to cover your own butt, was it an instant outrage for you? Let's get it out on the air now. Is that the case? Did you send the same samples to the same labs?
Well, absolutely sent the same sample. But was I outraged? Not really. You see, is what David did is he said, "Hey, just so you know, Justin's telling the truth, but he's lying about this." For my story to be true, it would validate everything. For my story to be a lie, it just makes the whole study a fraud.
Right, and that's what it comes down to, is they're doing everything that they can do to make sure the Kethchum study doesn't come out as a fraud, including, calling the originators of what they call the most compelling and best evidence that they have that they've been able to sequence has now been outed by another DNA study as being simply a piece of bear with human contamination, which after weeks of laying in the wild is not a surprise to any woodsman that you weren't able to recover the steak. And I wanted to get something else out on the air now. You specifically at no time have ever claimed that the piece of flesh that you recovered was indeed from a Bigfoot at any time. Is that correct?
Correct. I was hopeful. I was optimistic. It seemed logical to me, the time and place it was found. But there's a lot of other factors that you have to look at. The fact that I have a bear dog. I run hounds for bears, and we train our dogs to be able to find bears. I can go in the Sierra and find a dead bear tomorrow, just because I have a dog that is trained to find nothing but bears. Well, and occasionally deer. But
well,
that's what the dogs do.
Right, that's the whole point of it. It's just like cadaver dogs. I mean, I can't go out in the woods and find a dead body right away, but a cadaver dog can instantly go out into the woods and find a dead body. The same thing with bear dogs. They're trained on the scent specifically, and that's what they search for, like drug dogs. I can understand that. And I can understand. I really wanted to just the questioning of it was, I've seen in a couple of separate reports where it's quoted where you went back anywhere between 3 weeks and 5 weeks after the actual event happened, and I just wanted to clear that up. How much time had actually passed from the time that you had realized what had happened and you left the bodies there to the time that you went back the first time to actually search for them?
34 days.
34 days. Okay, so we're talking a full almost 5 weeks of deceased bodies in the woods. The chances of anything being left over in the spot that it was actually there is slim to none. I mean, anybody who's a woodsman who's seen carcasses, live dead kills from yesterday that somebody didn't find has already been half scavenged by 24 hours. So 34 days later, your chances of finding anything intact are very slim to none because the creatures are hungry, and it's called the food chain. It's a natural chain of events that happen. So 34 days is a very long time to have passed. But I just wanted to know for myself, how long of that time had actually passed. So now let's go back. Kipp, do you have any questions for Justin on that part of it?
No, I just wanted to comment. It seems like the people who have the strongest opinions of who Justin is or what he's done are people that have never met him and have formed these opinions. I don't know. So I do want to just put a shout out to Justin. He has done a remarkable job keeping his head above all of this, considering people either love him or they hate him. And he's talked about this many, many, many times. This dead horse has been killed, drug out, and killed again and again and again. And the fact that Justin still is a great guy, he still puts up with it. I just want to let people know that that I admire Justin for keeping his head above all of this. So that's my 2 cents.
Oh,
thank you.
I agree. Justin and I have never met. I mean, we've been friends on Facebook for a long time, and there's one other thing I kind of wanted to get out of the way here that I've seen way too many people talking about. I'll admit, I love my trolls. I love my haters. Please, guys, come troll me and hate me all you want as long as you're watching the show. But this excuse that you and Sean and Roe and a few other people were all friends before this event ever happened, and it was thought up, and it's been a hoax from the beginning. On my show, I just want to break it out in the open. I've got 2 of you from the horse's mouth. Is this a fact or is this untrue? Have you met through the dealings and the conclusions of trying to document what actually happened?
No,
it's just.
Oh, sorry. I met Justin through Sean. Sean met Justin online a year after the event actually happened.
And do you agree with that? With that sequel?
Justin? I would. If anybody. There's a lot of people they're saying that they have proof that, not a lot of people, there's one person that keeps saying it over and over and over, but he has proof of this. And I said it before, I'll take the deed to my house and sign it over to anybody that can prove that I knew Sean before a year ago. If he's got proof of this, that's fine. We can do it. He can come over.
I'll go on record now. He can come on my show and bring the proof with him right now. I mean, I'll do a separate side podcast for him, 24 hours notice. If he can show that he got the proof, I'll bring him on. I'm one of those people who want to bring the truth out. I'm not slinging rumors. I'm not being buddy with people. These are the current events that are going on, and I want to talk to those people and bring the truth out. And let's get rid of all the rumors from the fact. I'm not friends with Justin Smeja, but I believe that he believes his story is true. And that's enough for me to say I'd like to see what the rest of the continuation happens with the story.
And my 2 cents on this is that there are going to be people that are going to believe or not believe, no matter what. So not sure what it's going to accomplish to bring out proof for people. Yeah, I guess, if you're not going to believe it, don't believe it. He's told the truth time and time again. My God, the man has sat through a polygraph test. I think that's enough. He had said, I didn't know these guys before any of this, and who does he have to prove that to? I don't think he has anybody to prove that to.
I agree.
I think
we have a pretty long paper trail showing actually when we met, original emails and all that. It's pretty easy just through our text messages and emails to show that when we met, unless we're just a bunch of idiots.
Well, let's go ahead and dispel another rumor, in fact, that you were not Ed Smith either, correct?
Who's that?
Okay, exactly. There we go. Hallelujah. Who's that? That's exactly what that answer should have been. Justin, it was another crappy hoax that came out not too long ago. I'm glad you know nothing about it. It was that whole Daisy in a box mess that we're going to hang the pirates out.
The MARBCWTH thing?
Yeah, that whole mess there. We're going to hang the pirates outside of the city walls because we're not going to let it happen again. Now, let's get back to Tammy here. Now, Tammy, you were there live. I mean, now, did you talk to Justin right there at the conference, or did you talk to him later? Were you able to give David a response to what Justin had responded to you?
I talked to him after the conference and said that I went to a lecture, basically, and here's what David Paulides is saying in his lectures, that he's traveling around giving, all over wherever he's given his lectures. So I didn't know if he was aware of that. So I am friends with Justin. We've been, kind of getting acquainted through Facebook and on the telephone, talking about the Sierras and hunting and, all things outdoors. And I believe Justin's story. And so, I was kind of disturbed when I heard the things that I heard at the lecture.
Okay, so unfortunately you weren't able to look Pilates in the eye and tell him, I just talked to Justin Smeja and he says you're full of crap. So unfortunately you weren't able to do that. So this is where your blog post came about, that you wanted to let the community know that you were out there. This is what happened, and you talked to Justin, and that was Justin's reply that they were bold-faced lies. Your next call was to who? Was it to Bart Cartino? Is that correct?
I got a Facebook message from Bart to give him a call and let him know what was going on, and got some more insight on the big picture. So that happened in the next day or so.
Yeah, I was actually when I talked to Tammy, then she wanted to get a quote from me saying, so how do you feel about all this? And she toned it down quite a bit from what I had actually said. She took maybe the nicer things that I replied about the whole thing. I think I said, well, if David Pilates said this, he's a fucking idiot. He's a moron. He's a joke. And, it just went on from there. But, I mean, it's for somebody, like, if you really think about what he's saying, it's... But that's fine.
Okay, Justin. Let me ask you a question here. It was just brought up from the peanut gallery. Does Melba Kethchum actually have a sample of your DNA to be compared against in the sample that they are testing and claiming that is a human hybrid with unknown primate?
No. Well, if she does, then I didn't provide it to her.
Okay, you have not provided it to her. She may have gotten it from a separate lab, but it's not that you're aware of. Does she have a sample of?
But, yeah.
Okay, that's. I wanted to clear that up as well. A question from the peanut gallery is always welcome. We'll have to work on a system for that a little better. Now, Tammy. Okay, so you talked to Bart and Justin, and you've decided upon yourself that you believe the other side of the story, and that David is just pushing his book and trying to make money and just really pushing everything for monetary gain is what it really seems to be. He's there selling footprint casts of unknown origins. He's there autographing and signing his books. He's trying to set up money lectures because obviously you were being charged to get into this lecture, correct?
$5.
Right. So this was a paid gig at a museum, and I'm sure they approached the museum. I'm sure the museum did not go out and seek these people out and said, "Come to our museum and we'll pay you to do a lecture and we'll charge a fee for our constituents to come in and use it." Is that correct? Would that be?
Well, I don't know the details of how the museum booked that gig.
Okay, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. No rumors. That's absolutely great. Now, so you've gotten Justin's side of it, and you've gotten Bart's take on it, and you have your own take on it because you were there. And unfortunately, as we've discussed previously, there is no digital audio or video of this, and we've discussed how we'll not make that mistake in the future. But
correct.
What made you so outraged enough that you had to blog about it and really get it out to the community so that they would know what really happened? What particular point was it that set you off? Was it the fact that it was David Pilates and his monetary schemes, or was it the fact that he attacked something that he really knew nothing about?
I think it was that. I think that probably it was somewhat his arrogance about the whole subject. And the fact that I had some insight, from Justin himself. And, I knew that what he was saying didn't jive with reality. So, that's why I felt that I should post something. And so whenever I did write the article and, ran it by Sean and everything, I just, I guess that the thing that really disturbed Paulides is that I put my opinion at the beginning and the end of that, which, he took offense to. By the way, I'd like to mention now that previous to my article, his blog didn't have any activity since November. So, now there's a lot of attention to the subject. It might not all be positive, but he's getting a lot of attention. I'm sure books are selling. David, you're welcome.
So you've taken your take on it is we've taken a guy who's kind of been irrelevant for quite some time, and bring up a little bit of drama to where he wants to stir it up so that he can become relevant in the community again, and all of a sudden get people coming to his website and buying books from him and hopefully getting on the lecture tours.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can completely follow you there, and he's not the first person to do such a thing to make such a wild claim to get craziness like that. Now, Justin, what was your final take on all of that? I mean, are you holding David Paulides responsible for it? You have rights, you have logistical rights that you can go and get a lawyer. This is slanderous. This is in public, and you do have a witness to the fact that the man has outright slandered you and made you unwhole in public. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I don't get too worked up about that. The stuff that I found far more fascinating than what he said about me was the nonsense about the orbs and the window and you cross into a wormhole or something. I guess you're like in the woods and you're going and you cross into a wormhole, and then you end up in the other reality, and they invite you in to the Bigfoots. It's like an Indian thing, and there's like shit flying around people's faces and heads. It's like a family of 5 or something like that. I'm not sure how it goes, but they invite you into their circle, and then you can see them. And there's windows and orbs and. That's more the stuff that was mind-blowing to me.
I agree.
Whether he was quoting somebody else or whether he was reading it out of a book, I could give a fuck about. It still came out of his mouth. And that's just mind-blowing to me. I could listen to stuff like that all day long.
I agree.
Out there.
I'm actually seeking out to interview, on one of the upcoming podcasts very soon, somebody from that realm of the metaphysical Bigfoot, the mind speak Bigfoot, because I'm really intrigued in that. I don't want to, I want people to understand this isn't about me choosing and picking and specifically being mean to anybody. This is just bringing information to the public that I have questions of, and I want to interview people and see what they have to say about it. But I agree with the magic orbs and the magic window and everything else. It's really intriguing to me, and I could listen to it as well. And Kipp, you've got something you want?
Oh no, I just wanted to mention that. It's a relief, and it's nice when somebody who's as reputable and well spoken as Bart Catino is basically summed up exactly, answered everything that David Paulides had asked and made claims on Bigfoot Evidence blog. So if people wanted to go to that, I don't know if we can put up a link, but Bart does an outstanding job, as he always does, with putting very eloquently exactly the facts, answering all the comments, and so if we could get that link up, that would be probably helpful to the audience if they haven't already seen that.
Yeah, we'll be able to put that link up in the comments of the podcast once we get the archive up. Okay. I've actually spoken to Bart, and he's got a couple other engagements. We'd like to have had him on the show that we could talk about it as well, but unfortunately he had other engagements going on. So we'll have him on in the future to talk about his aspect of it as well, hopefully soon, maybe even a side podcast or something, maybe a half-an-hour edition or something. We'll figure something out to do with Bart. Now, Justin, I appreciate that fact that you're not upset at the man. I mean, you don't want to go out and get a lawyer and sue him and get 50% of his book sales for the rest of his life, and I admire that, because you've got a man here on one side who's telling an extraordinary story. I mean, and you have to admit, through it all, it's an extraordinary happening story. But you know what? It's not an unbelievable story, and eventually it had to happen to somebody. I mean, I've said it for years that a hunter eventually is just going to get that fight or flight instinct. He's going to pull the trigger, and that's just going to be the end of it. But what happens afterwards is it's a shame, and I'll tell you that. It's a god-awful shame that the animals weren't able to be harvested and examined and put to better use than what happened to them. But the resources of the people that were directly involved with this and the resources that have gone in after it have been tremendous, and they've been at the people's own expense. Nobody's paying for expeditions to go back to these places and go in and look into this information at all. Where David Pilates has taken all of his information out of a book and writing books about Bigfoot kidnapping people in the woods. I don't need Bigfoot to be kidnapping people in the woods. I got news for you. There's plenty of stuff out there that'll eat you without Bigfoot having to be involved at all. So, no doubt. So you've got a monetary person on one hand who wants to sell books and wants to do lectures and wants to charge people to hear somebody else's actual thoughts on Bigfoots, and then you've got a genuine down-to-earth guy on the other side who's telling an incredible story, who's passed lie detector tests, who's gone through excruciating amounts of interviews and has never really changed the story about any of it ever, and will talk to some nobody like me, the biggest nobody in Bigfooting, over the fact that it's still current news. And I appreciate that. So, David Pilates, I'd love for you to come on my show. Man, you can come on my show and we'll talk. I will be as fair to you as I am to anybody else. I've got questions that I'd like to ask you. Now, going back to Tammy here for just a moment.
Now, I can fill you in on how he feels about podcasts.
That's exactly what I was going to ask. Now, Tammy, this was not the end of it. Tammy had gone and actually very politely gone on to have a nice little conversation with David after the inquiring questions that she had. Why don't you tell us about that, Tammy?
Well, I asked him after the lecture was over and the question from the audience when he went over to the book signing table, and ask him, to further explain the situation with the samples. And he went on to say that Justin had sent a bear sample to the other labs and, something else to them. And that he was lying to cover up for, that he had lied to the authorities, just trying to cover his rear for lying to the authorities, which, I knew that not to be true. And so I then went on to ask him that if he would mind joining us on our podcast. And he said that he didn't like to do podcasts because the people involved usually don't know what they're talking about. And I told him that our podcast which is After Hours with Team Taser, with the host Rictor and Nadia Moore and myself, and that it was a fan-involved podcast, and we fielded questions from the chat room from the fans. And I said, but it was sponsored by Team Taser. And he said he didn't want to have anything to do with Team Taser. So I said, thank you for your time, shook his hand, and left the lecture.
So he was absolutely nothing to do with Team Taser. What an absolute shame. This is a TaserMedia.com production, absolutely, and it's a shame because there's certain they're making a qualification on an entire group that has absolutely nothing to do with the group that they're talking about to begin with. But David, the opportunity is still here right now. Now, Kipp, do you have any questions that involve that whole part of the end there?
Just wanted to mention that I've been a fan of David Pilates in the past. I've really enjoyed his books, the Tribal Bigfoot, and I've wanted a copy of the Missing 411. And he has done some what I thought were fairly impressive things, and I found an interest in his books. I do have to question when people are afraid to put their opinions and discuss with others. And the blogs, the podcasts, those types of forums are it's new media. It's an excellent opportunity to get the public's opinions, get people's thoughts, validate, I guess, your own opinions. So I always have to question when somebody's afraid to engage with the public. So that makes me question.
Now, Justin, since we've got you on the phone here, let me go ahead and ask you the question directly from Tammy. At any point, have you been in fear of prosecution for homicide of a human being whatsoever?
No, absolutely not. I have called Department of Fish and Game no less than 6 times. They don't want to get involved. They don't want to have anything to do with it. They wanted to poke it with a stick for a little bit, and they wanted to leave it alone. No, absolutely not. Nobody's going to get in trouble for this till we can verify that this is real.
Okay, so the fact is on the table now. From here forward, you have absolutely no question whether you're going to be in jail time or prosecution for anything whatsoever. You just want you're looking for an answer too, because you weren't a Bigfooter before this, correct?
Correct.
So this is, you've been thrust into the mystery of Bigfoot due to this encounter that you had with these two individuals that this has all led to from the begin with. And I just, if I don't know the answer to these questions, well, obviously there's a lot of other people that do, and I don't want to beat this old dead horse. I'm not going to go through it or not. But, I just want to put it out there. The fact you've never been in fear of being arrested for this. You had bear tags to be legally bear hunting to begin with. There was nothing illegal going on other than the fact that you kind of freaked when you realized what it was that you'd shot.
Yeah, well, you get up there and, this thing that looks, big and hairy and scary, all of a sudden it starts to look a lot like a person.
I completely agree with that. It
starts to change the thought process quite a bit.
Until you get face to face with one of these creatures, you don't know how terrifying they can actually be. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, but once you get up real close to them, that they look awfully. They have many human features that are
right. My point being is when it's a living, breathing, snarling creature that has the physical abilities to rip your arms from your body and beat you to death with it. That's a monster. Laying dead, I agree. It's very possible that they would have much more primate characteristics. That's what they are. Yeah. A primate is a primate is a primate is a primate. We all come from the same bush at some point. And it's not even a question of what they are at this point. It's just we're even trying to prove that they are at this point. And we're getting closer and closer to that each day. And that's what all this DNA talk is about. No one's going to understand the actual data when it comes out. Half of us won't even be able to understand the white paper that comes out. And the published that comes out from the peer-reviewed people is going to be in such legal jargon that no one's going to be able to actually claim any admission of anything to begin with. And we're really going to be back to square one, having to have a body in a box or a bag, or have some kind of DNA sample taken from a dart from somebody that's got video of it when it was done. I mean, that's really what it's going to come down to. Now, Tammy, you saw that David had not had a post on his blog in quite some time, and then all of a sudden after this altercation, he posted. Did the post have to do with his encounter at the Oklahoma lecture?
Why, yes, it did. He interpreted our encounter at the lecture as a plot or an attack with me and members of Team Taser, plotting to, come to this event and publicly attack him.
So it's become a plot from Team Taser to specifically go and single out David Pilates, to out him in public for what comes out of his nonsense mouth. I'm sorry, but it's like I take with Matt Moneymaker. I like Matt Moneymaker, but in the same token, please stop saying stupid things. People won't pick on you if you stop saying stupid things.
Yeah.
I kind of hate to put it that way, but you're just setting yourself up for somebody like me to come in and say, Bigfoot don't walk in a straight line because they follow coyote roads, you moron. And that's what it comes down to. He's the one going around spreading these things and spreading these lies. And if he said it to you, we know that he's calling Justin outright liars and anybody that might bring it up in any of his lectures. And that's a problem because it is an untruth. And dadgummit, it's time that somebody takes a stand and start hanging pirates from outside the walls. And I'm willing to do it. Now, if this isn't what David's about, David, please come on the show and talk to us. We'll be really glad to have it. Now, Ro's got a question. Now, go ahead. What you got, Ro?
First, I got to unmute.
Or were you just agreeing?
I was just agreeing with you, but what I wanted to make a statement that this whole plot against Taser thing is such an easy out, because I've heard it before, and not just from Pilates. It's come from other camps saying, Taser's just trying to take us. We are so unorganized. They're giving Taser way too much credit. Way too much credit.
Yeah, we are an assembly of disorganized individuals trying to do something credible in the Bigfoot world, and that is it. And all of us have started out as nobodies, and we're going to end up being nobodies, and that's just fine with us.
And here's the thing with this new media thing. This is the forum. This is how information gets out. This is how questions are asked. This is how it is. Whether it's Team Taser, whether it's the Squatchers Lounge, whether it's through a blog, whether it's through this is new media. This is how it's going to be from now on. And the people who are open to that and the people who are willing to get out and actually engage others in this open new media, those are the people who are going to be believed. Those are the people who are going to be looked at and respected. And if you're not willing to do that, I think you've got an uphill battle. So, and I agree with what Ro was just saying about Team Taser. Team Taser is just a group of interested people with the same passion, the same ideas, just like the Squatchers Lounge, just like Finding Bigfoot, those folks. So why he wouldn't want to engage those folks, if it's uncomfortable, maybe that's a good thing. Get out of your comfort zone. Answer the questions. Answer the hard questions. Be out there. Put yourself out there and engage. And if you're not willing to do that, then good luck.
I'm willing to do an interview with anybody who's willing to come to talk to me who wants to tell the truth. If you want to tell the truth about what's going on out there, if you want to dispel rumors, it may not be, we don't even have to wait for a podcast. We'll put it up and we'll put the media out there and get it blasted over the Sean Evidence blog, over the Bigfoot Evidence blog, and make sure that it goes out to the people. Because that's what it's about. I'm willing to talk to anybody and get the truth that's out there. Now, Tammy, what's your final wrap up on this? What do you want people to take away from your blog and your situation that's out there?
Well, it's like I said in my response to David's post on his blog. My opinion still stands about the window opening and a Bigfoot stepping out. That is weird.
Yeah. I want to talk to people about that. Go ahead, Justin. What's your thought?
Well, no, I just think this whole birthing station, blurry stick structure, family of 5 nonsense is nonsense. There is no question about orbs and floating and living underground and swimming for miles. It is, none of that makes sense.
I agree, and I want somebody to come on and talk to me about it because I want to mind speak with Bigfoot. I really do. I've been around
psychics.
Them.
Oh man, well you got to be invited to the wormhole.
Well, I want to believe.
I do think that there's, and I've said this before. There's so much that we don't know. We know more. I'm sorry. There's more that we don't know than what we know, and I think that as a community, we need to be open-minded, and most certainly, whether it's Polites or on our side, I think that we need to be mutually respectful and open, and that's my opinion. I think that it's to our own detriment as a community if we're not open. And I agree. Some of these types of things are really kind of out there, and I would have to say that I don't necessarily agree. But I do think that it's good for our community to be open-minded and to kind of look at these things and at least be respectful of other people's opinions from both sides.
Agree. Now, Justin, I got a question for you.
That's a very nice attitude, Kipp. That really is.
I got a question for you there, Justin. Now, are you aware that Melba Ketchum's got a petition for protection of Bigfoot that she's challenging the White House?
The White House, huh?
Yeah, the wethepeople.gov is a website where citizens can start a petition, and if they get 25,000 signatures to it, then the White House is supposed to respond to it. However, I believe her petition has fallen a little short in the categories of signatures, unfortunately. I didn't know if you were aware she had that or not.
I am for verification, and then we can worry about protection after that.
Right, and that's what I wouldn't sign it. I actually got into an argument with somebody over it, and they were a big Melba supporter, and I apologize that they didn't see my side of it, but I can't put the cart before the horse. We've got to have a species identification before we can protect it, and that's just the way it goes. And you can sign all the wannabe petitions you want to sign. They don't have to respond to something that's not there. So if it's not there and they can't prove that it's there, and there's not enough to give it a species identification, then your petition isn't really going to be successful. So what's the point of me wasting the clicks to do it? I want the protection. My whole thing, I don't want to put Bigfoot in a zoo. I want to be able to tell hikers, people, outdoorsmen, hunters, and other things, the actual types of signs and locations and habitats to watch out for the fact that there's a large bipedal hairy animal out there that can hurt you if you scare it. More so than I want to see one in the zoo or some kind of habitat range. Now, one more question that I have for you, Justin, before we move on to this now. What's your views on the Bigfoot feet situation, the plural of it? Personally, I say Sasquatch or Bigfoot plural. as in, you don't have meese, you have moose. And you have a moose, or you have moose. You have a whole pot of moose, or you have a moose.
I subscribe to the big feetses.
The big fetuses.
Big feetses.
Big fetuses, okay.
That would be plural. Or big footuses.
Big footuses?
Yeah,
Big footuses,
I like big footuses.
Big footuses. It sounds dinosaurish. They've been around for a long time. How about you, Tammy? Which camp do you subscribe to, the Bigfoot or the Big Feet?
I like Bigfootses, like hobbitses.
Right, my hobbitses. Yes, come get my hobbitses. That's wonderful.
How about the who cares this?
Okay, so now we're really getting down to the wire here, guys. We do a nice wrap up podcast here. I got one question for you, Tammy. Now, when I order the sweet sassy glassy pendants here, you do it through the NC shop online. Am I able to request details possibly in something, or do you do custom orders?
Yeah, I do. We have to PM about it on Facebook, or there's a way to chat with me on Etsy, and
contact the seller.
Yeah, and I can see if I can do it. And there's a pretty long wait for me to get it done because I have to round up the glass and
a small surcharge for custom orders.
Yes.
Exactly. You got to cover the artist's expense. You are a one-of-a-kind artist. We love you. Now, Justin, is there anything that you want to, what is it that you want people to know coming away from this podcast? What is it that you really want the listeners and the people out there to know on this whole David Pilates thing? I mean, are you clear? Are you good with it?
I'm good with it. I definitely would like to, see a Bigfoot's is in a box.
Absolutely. And Justin, what do you want people to take away with this? Leave you alone?
Well, I don't get too worked up about it, but it sure seems that he could take a lesson and just people being humble. If he's trying to get fans, if he's trying to get people to like him, he's going about it quite the wrong way. Humility would be a good word for him to study.
Yeah, now we get a statement from the chat room here. One of them is Birdman38 says, Ro, we need something like Patty to happen again. And I would have to agree. I mean, we really need something compelling on some HD video that's going to, capture the attention of the world and the mainstream media and finally get some money backing, not in the academic sense of it, but to the real researchers in the field. Let's get them the equipment and the resources and the time that they need to be out there and prove it. Now, one other thing, Justin, what can we expect? What do you got coming up on this here, Justin? You've got something coming up here soon. I got a busy week ahead of me. I'm going to try to put some thoughts out for some people. I have been a part of this DNA study. I've seen a lot of papers and held stuff in my hand and seen real things and heard a lot of things here and there. And I was just, these past couple weeks, been kind of busy at work. But this week, I will sit down and I will be able to write down exactly what I've seen, exactly what I've held in my hand, the results, so to say. And because, I don't have an NDA. I don't have anything like that. But I'll just have a summary of what I've experienced in the last 2 years. Excellent. That's very exciting news. I'm really looking forward to seeing that. I'd actually like to see somebody put all the resource links together as well for the documentaries and the other links that go along with it, so that somebody could follow the story from beginning to end and make an informed decision instead of hearing the rumor and the hoopla of everything else that's out there. Now, Kipp, what have you got there, Kipp?
Just there was a statement from the chat room from Birdman38. He basically said, Ro, we need something like Patty to happen again, and I would agree.
Welcome to the show, Kipp.
Welcome to the show. Something like Patty too again.
Kipp, we covered that about 3 minutes ago, buddy. It's okay. I love you.
Okay, I've caught up now.
There we go. We're all good. Yeah. Now let's go ahead and open it up to questions from the chat room. Is there anybody out there in the chat room that has questions directly for Tammy or Justin? Here's your chance. You guys said that you want to talk to the man. We've got the man on the phone. Is there anything specific out there that we haven't covered on this particular issue with the David Pilates outing and calling him a liar? We've been through all of that might want to be covered right now on our podcast.
Fire away.
Yeah. The questions that I fielded for you guys have already come through. And have been covered, it looks like. Someone wanted to know about the protection plan, and someone else wanted to know about the Bigfoot, Big Feet's plural situation. I think there There is another question coming in right now about high-tech cameras, and what about using the low-tech cameras?
Well, that's a good question. The high-tech cameras, the HD technology that's coming out now, well, not that's coming out now, that's becoming affordable now, and that's the way technology comes out. It comes out in 3 waves. When technology is new, it's super expensive, nobody can afford it, the filmmakers can't even afford it. You wait till the next technology comes out, it steps down one and becomes medium range to where, some people can afford it, but not really. When the third technology comes out, then that original technology is now down to the affordable position that the common man can actually afford it and buy it. So we're talking about the $300 to $500 HD camera range, and they have starting to get 27 to 30x optical zooms. Now that's just huge in technology as far as covering the zoom aspect of getting in close on creatures that you can't tell what they are. A digital zoom brings the picture in closest, but the data doesn't increase. Therefore, it pixelates the picture and distorts the image, so you still can't tell what it is.
And as we continue to go through with all of the technology that comes out, whether it's digital cameras, whatever it is, it increases the opportunity for hoaxing. It increases the opportunity for somebody always trying to stay one step ahead and come up with the fake Bigfoot. So
now my advice to people. My advice to people when it comes to cameras is start going to your camera shops and finding out all the old 35mm stuff that people are selling cheap as dirt everywhere with the long-range lenses. Because I got news for you. Digital cameras have nothing on actual film as far as detail is concerned, and you can digitally sample that detail of that 35mm film later. So go out and get these great big 35mm cameras with the long distance lenses that you can pick up for a couple of $100 now on Craigslist and eBay and all over the place, and start shooting actual film instead of digital, and you'll have better results in what your end actual evidence becomes, and that's more important than anything else. Now, Justin, when you're going out and looking for technology, do you have any technology? I mean, are you one of those squatchers, or are you just out there squatching to squatch?
Oh, a friend of mine, Wally, has graciously lent me a thermal imager, and we've been able to get out there. He's loaned me a couple cameras, and we were able to get a couple blob squatches, but nothing that was worth releasing. A friend of mine in Texas last year got it was through a time-lapse trail camera, and he got probably the best images that I've seen. I'll upload those to my Facebook, but he's got the best images that I've seen from a Bigfoot in recent years.
Excellent, excellent. And that's what we need. We need more evidence that's actually believable. We need some clear stuff, people. Blob squatches, blur sticks, hobflops, hobbit squares. These things have got to go away. It's great that you have it. It is evidence, but it's not compelling evidence. Let's stop blurring the world, and the Facebook pages with blob squatches. Let's get some real opinions of some evidence. And I'm hoping with our roundtable later with Rob Duday and Melissa Adair, Squatch Unlimited, for the evidence reveal of what he found down there with the Louisiana Bigfoot sighting is going to be really interesting. Kipp, is there another question there?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Now, Shane Corson is going to be the last question from the chat room. He wants to know, now, Justin, about the bear theory, the hybrid bear theory, that, what's your feeling on that?
Quite honestly, I'll go against the general public. I'm not really opposed to that idea. Just some sort of a hybrid that would come from a bear, I guess.
Not any kind of no primate DNA, just a hybrid type of bipedal bear.
Well, I don't. There was no bear going on there. There was nothing. I mean,
okay,
the artist renderings show that there's just nothing that it could be.
So it's primate. There's no bear. It's
primate. Why did it take the lab 7 months to come up with telling us that it's a bear? I mean, how does that make sense?
It doesn't. There's definitely some anomalies there, and I definitely agree with that. And I want to thank everybody for being part of the podcast today. I really do. I mean, I hate to wrap this up, but we've got a short format, and it seems to work for us. And I really like the time that we've spent here. And I think we've got a lot of truth and answers out to the questions out to the public. I want to thank our guest Tammy Murray and Justin Smeja for being with us.
No problem.
Honestly, and from my co-host Kipp Morrill, who's always sitting over there with the big smile, Mr. X-Male model himself, riding the back seat. Why drive when you can be driven? and
That's right.
the production of Rock and Roll Jihad. We thank you very much, and we're going to say good night. Thank you very much for seeing the Squatchers Songs podcast number 2. We'll see you next time.
One shout out, Mitchell Wilson.
Mitchell Wilson, we can't forget you, brother. Much big love. We'll see you next time.